Shalom, shalom. Want to give our honor and glory to Yahweh. Hashem Yahweh Shaddai, bro. Aliyah with the servants. Back at it again with a video through the Spirit, right? And so this video is titled, "We have to be diligent. We have to be diligent, right? In this truth, you have to be diligent, right? And so I'm gonna bring up the definition of the word diligent, right? And then we're gonna go through some precepts, right? So let's get it. Share screen. All right. Let's get this. All right, there we go. Right. So it says diligent means right here. We're gonna get the Wells Dictionary. Right. It says characterized by steady, earnest, energetic effort. Right. Let's get another one. Let's go back to where it was. I was mentioning. It says diligent means showing steady and earnest care or effort or painstaking, right? And when you think about it, when it's truth, it says being steady, right? Earnest, care, right? When you think about keeping the commandments, you got to do it with care. Because sometimes when I say it, like as in, it's so many things that we got to do meticulously. Like certain things we got to do meticulously, and certain things we cannot do, right? For instance, when it's going into right the dietary laws, when it's going into not I wouldn't say dietary laws, I won't say that. When it's going into like the laws of uncleanness, right? When it's going into like when the see when you how you see the copulation, when a woman when she's unclean, right? And different for instance the Passover, right? How you have to cook the Passover, how it has to be cooked, how it has to be eaten, right? What you have to eat, what you cannot eat, right? Things like that. Some things the truth can be meticulous, right? But we gotta be earnest, right, and steady with it, right? And like just like a surgeon, right? When you have a surgeon has steady hands, right? They're very careful. In this truth, you got to be very careful, right? Careful to not break the laws, right? Careful to not uh, go to hell off, right? Careful to not disobey the Most High, right? You got to be careful in this thing because it's very easy to go off. It's very easy to break a commandment, right? It's very easy. It's easy to do that, right? It's easy to be wicked, but when you being a sincere and righteous man, right? You got to be very careful, right? You got to be careful in this thing, right? So like, and I'm gonna get it the biblical definition. First, I'm gonna get a precept in the book of Psalms, chapter 119 and verse 4. All right, Psalms 119 and verse 4. So it says, "Thou hast commanded us to keep thy precepts diligently." Right, so Lord commanded, right, the Israelites, the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, hey, we got to keep these commandments diligently, right? And let's see the biblical definition of diligent, right? It says very greatly, sore, exceedingly much, exceeding good, mighty, right? It says exceedingly much, might, force, abundance, muchness, force, abundance, exceedingly, right? Exceedingly, greatly, very, I don't know that word, but idiom, showing magnitude or degree, exceedingly, up to the abundance to great degree, right? And with muchness, right? So with that being said, right, when it says keep his commandments, right? Diligently keep our precepts diligently, right? We gotta keep it greatly keep it, abundantly keep it, force, might. We gotta put forth all our might. And I like when it goes to the definition and when you couple that with the Wells definition, right? It says being steady, earnest and care, right? And when you take that being earnest, right, mightily, right, exceedingly being careful in this truth, exceedingly, right, being earnest in this truth, right, abundantly being careful and earnest in this truth, and you want to be that way. It says, and I want to get this, and then I like this definition too. It says, did you know you're more likely to be diligent about something if you love doing it, right? So you'll be more diligent, right? You'll put more energy, you'll put more might in the precepts and the commandments if you actually love doing it. Think about that. When somebody like it's they give an example. It says the etymology of diligent reflects the fact that devotion can lead to energetic effort. It said devotion. How devoted really are you to keeping the commandments? Right? How devoted are you really to being on fire? Right? Being a righteous man or woman. Right? How devoted are you? It said it can lead to energetic effort. Right? And I'm gonna hold that. I got a precept that made me think about this, right? And as a matter of fact, I'm gonna bring it out right now because it's just on my mind, right? It's on my spirit to bring out this precept when it says it can lead to energetic effort. I'm gonna go to this precept in the book of Sirach 43 and 30. Right, right there. All praises. Right here. This precept right here. This is what made me think of. It says, when ye glorify the Lord, exalt him as much as ye can, for even yet will he far exceed. When you exalt him, put forth all your strength. And then we look at the biblical definition, right, of diligent. It said might, force, exceeding, but abundance, right? So you got to put forth all your strength, being diligent, and be not weary, for you can never go far enough. So you can never go far enough in this thing, right? So when you're being diligent, right? Because sometimes you can get weary, but say be not weary. That's when you go to being diligent, because it can bring forth that energy to keep going, that fire, right? To keep persevering, right? To keep keeping these commandments, right? So let's go back to that, right? So it says, and so yeah, there you have it with the biblical definition of it is just muchness, force, abundance, might, right? Exceedingly. And so when you go to that's not what I was trying to do. Okay. When you go to the passage, right, i.e. what we're reading, right, and it says, again, I'm reading the scripture again, it says, thou hast commanded us to keep thy precepts diligently, right, mightily, right, exceedingly, right? So we gotta put forth our might. We gotta abundantly try to keep these commandments with abundance, right? When you have something in abundance, you have a lot of it, right? When you have a surplus of it, right? So you want to make sure that we constantly keep these commandments, right, to the best of our abilities, right? We all the way in it, right? You got to be all the way in this truth, right? That goes with, you know what I'm saying, not being lukewarm, because some people, they believe that they're Israelites and they got to keep the commandments, but they're not really. When it comes to being diligent, they're not diligent. They just know it, but they're not really putting no work. Right? They not really grinding in the spirit, right? Some people, they put more grind or work in their carnal life than they do their spiritual life, and that's what you're not being diligent in the spirit, right? You're not putting forth all your strength in the spirit, all your might, all your force in the spirit, right? And that's what people start lacking at, right? When it's not by not being diligent. When you look at the Webster dictionary, what it said, it says it could lead to energetic force, right? So you can imagine somebody that's not being diligent. What does that lead to? That leads to slothfulness, right? It leads to slothfulness. Then what happens when you slothful? You end up falling asleep, The Lord, he woke you up in this truth. You realize you're an Israelite. Know we got to keep the commandments. Know we got to have faith in Yahweh Shai. He woke you up. But when you wake up, you got to stay up. Think about it when you tired. The first thing somebody think about when they tired, let me just start doing something. Let me start doing something that way I can keep myself together. Versus if you just sit there, when you tired and you just sitting there, it's so easy to fall asleep. Just sitting in the chair, you gone. You know what I'm saying? And that's what a lot of people are doing through the spirit, right? Because they're not being diligent. They're starting to fall asleep. And that falling asleep is going back into the world, right? The Lord woke you up. Ain't no time to go back in the world. We got to stay up. We got to be active in this truth. And being active in the truth is being diligent in this truth, right? That's when you putting in that work, keeping these commandments, you repenting, you studying, you praying, you fasting, you keeping the high holidays, you putting in work. You doing the work, right? Whether it be you helping build the ministry, giving alms to the ministry, something. You're doing something versus that person that's just doing nothing, right? They know what it is, but they're doing nothing about it, right? So we want to be diligent in this thing, right? So let's go to the another precept, 2 Peter 3:14, right? It says, wherefore, and then I'm gonna go to Proverbs. Matter of fact, I'm gonna get Proverbs first, and then I'm gonna go to 2 Peter. Right, I'm gonna get Proverbs first, because we was talking about, going to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Falling asleep. Proverbs 12:24. Right. The book of Proverbs, chapter 12:24. It says, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute. Right? So very simple, right? The diligent, they gonna bear rule. And where will the diligent bear rule? Right? Where will they be in rulership? In the kingdom. Right? In the kingdom, the diligent, those people that's being on fire, tell you what, the 144K, those crowns, they're going to be given to diligent men. Not brothers it's not going to be given to that slothful brother. That brother that's never trying to go to camp, that brother that's never trying to put in no work, that brother that's you never see him at the feast days. He's just slothful, right? He's not trying to study. He don't try to read. He don't try to pray, right? A crown is not going to be given to that kind of man, right? But it says, the hand of the diligent shall bear rule. But those brothers on fire, right? They praying, right? Reading, studying, right? Keeping the commandments, repenting, doing the work. Hey, those brothers gonna get crowns, right? That's what's gonna receive that crown. And how mighty would that be to be in rulership in the kingdom? But don't think it's just gonna come by you being slothful. Don't sit here and say, yeah, I want that crown. I want to be in rulership. I want to rule over cities, but you don't want to put in no work. But you want to be lazy. But you want to be a couch potato in the spirit, right? That's what a lot of people is, a couch potato in the spirit. They just sit there and just do nothing, right? You don't want to be that. You want to be active. Like how young Jay, they be saying they be active in the streets. Why you want to be active in the spirit though? You know what I'm saying? Or somebody be active in the gym or be active on the field, right? You want to be active in the spirit, constantly moving, right? Turning up through the spirit, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So let's go to the other precept. The book of 2 Peter, chapter 3 and verse 14. It says, wherefore, beloved, seeing that ye look for such things, be diligent, that ye may be found of him in peace, without spot and blameless. And then that goes also to the other part in the when I was talking about the Welch dictionary, when it says careful and steady, right? When you're trying to be blameless or without a spot, you got to be careful. Just think about that. Just think about it, if you got like an all white outfit on, right? You kind of being careful. What that is right there. Kind of looking down at you. You know what I'm saying? Looking at you watching where you step, watching where you walk. You making sure if you drink something, kind of drink it out here because you ain't trying to mess up. You ain't trying to mess up your all white, right? Or if you ain't even touch no food, you probably ain't even touch no drink either because you ain't trying to mess up. Right? You gotta be like the same way in the spirit. You gotta be careful, be steady. Like, hold up now. I ain't trying to get a stain on my spiritual garments. I ain't trying to do that. Now I ain't trying to rock like that. I don't need to be around little Pookie right now, right? Because you ain't trying to get a stain or a spot on your garment. You being careful. You being steady, right? Or, I don't need to be on this site. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't need to, whatever it may be, whatever you're dealing with, right? Or whatever could cause you to put a spot on your garment or on your all whites through the spirit, if you understand what I'm saying. You got to be careful from being around that, right? Being blameless, right? So you want to be careful in this thing, man. Steady. Like, hold up. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so let me get another piece. I'm going to the book of Proverbs, chapter 27, verse 23. All right, I'm going to Proverbs 27, 23. But another precept kind of came to mind. And I think I'm gonna see what it is. Let me see if let me see. Nah, it wasn't that. Nah, it was precept. But so yeah. So anyway, move forward. I'm going to Proverbs 27 and 23. Right, Proverbs 27 and 23. So again, you want to be careful in this truth and things like that. It's kind of like you're walking on eggshells. And when you think about Second Esdras chapter 7, when it's telling you that it's like a fire on one side and a deep water on the next, you got to be careful because you don't want to sway too far to the right. You don't want to sway too far to the left. You want to stay right there in the middle, right? And when you being diligent in this truth, it helps you stay in the middle because you're not distracted by the other outside things, right? That can cause you to go to the left or cause you to stray to the right. Why you want to stay straight in the middle, focused on that narrow path, right? That narrow path, right? And in that path, you got different obstacles, different afflictions and things like that. But when you diligent and you being sincere, right, the Lord, He'll help you get over those obstacles. He'll help you through those afflictions, right? But it's Proverbs 24 and 23. It says, "Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks and look well to thy herds," right? And when you think about that, I thought I was sharing my screen. And when you think about that too, right? It says, "Be diligent to know the state of thy flocks," right? And that goes into your household, right? That goes into your congregation. If you're a head of a congregation, if you're a husband, right? And not only the state of the flock, but state of the shepherd. Know the state of the shepherd. Know when the shepherd is lacking, because the shepherd, he's in charge of the flocks. So just like you got to know the state of the flocks, you got to know the state of yourself, your well-being. Are you really being on fire like you're supposed to? Are you really being sincere like you're supposed to? Are you really being diligent? Or are you really being careful in this truth? Or are you kind of just out here just to hell with it? Whatever happens, happens. If I go off, I go off. Right? You don't want to live like that. Like living life on the edge. Right? When you don't want to live life on the edge when you're in the truth, you kind of want to be like, again, kind of like, hey, I can't do that. I'm right here. I'm right here. Ain't no living life on the edge. Because when you living life on the edge, anything is bound to happen to you. Right? Now, when you're on that straight and narrow, right, that's less room for error, right? And then think about it, when you live a life on the edge, that's the easiest way to stray farther from the Most High, to stray farther from this truth, right? But anyways, let's go to Proverbs chapter 13. Right? Proverbs chapter 13. in verse number 4. Right? It says, the soul of the sluggard desireth and have nothing. Right? And think about this. How many people, and ask yourself, do you desire to get the kingdom? That's the question. First, do you desire to get the kingdom? And you got some people that say, yeah, I desire to get the kingdom. Yeah, I want that. Right? And have nothing. So the sluggard, though, he desires, he wants the kingdom too. But because he a sluggard, he ain't going to get it. He ain't going to have nothing. Just like in the world. If you don't grind, if you don't put in no work to get no bread, bro, you're going to be broke. You're going to be broke. It's sort of like that. You can't just sit on your behind and be like, man, you know, it's people like that. They be like, man, I want a car. Man, I want this kind of house. Man, I want this kind of whatever. But they not doing nothing to get it. They not putting in the work to get it. Man, I want this, I want that, I want this kind of shirt or this kind of shoes, whatever. But they not grinding to get it. Then you ain't got nothing. It's the same thing in the spirit. Man, I want all them precepts or whatever. You know, I desire the ones on precepts. I desire wisdom. Or man, I desire to know the Hebrew, be fluent in the Hebrew. Or whatever. I want to be, like I said, I want to be again. I want the kingdom. I desire to be the kingdom. I want to be in rulership. You desire these things, but you gotta put in work to do it. You gotta put in the work. You gotta have a grind. Because if you don't have a grind and you continue to be a sluggard, and it's truth, continue to be slothful, right? You ain't gonna have nothing. You don't get nothing. You gonna be assed out. Right, as they say, you're gonna be, excuse my language, but you ain't gonna have nothing because you ain't put in a word to get nothing. Right? Like they say in the world, you ain't put in on this. Right? You ain't put in. You ain't put nothing in. You gotta put something in. You gotta put some work in. Gotta put something on the table. Right? But the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. Right? Because that diligent person, man, they gonna be eating. They eating, right? They eating like they put in the work, and they really gonna be thinking about it again on the carnal aspect. If you really grinding and your pocket's getting fat, boy, you gonna be eating good. Boy, I'm talking you eating steak. You know what I'm saying? The high end lamb, the best steak, right? The best fruit, all that, because you got your pockets fat. You can get that, right? Just like in the spirit, right? By you being diligent, being sincere, a Lord gonna feed you, right? Through the spirit, Lord gonna feed you, right? You gonna feed a lot of people. They're spiritual man. He looking emaciated, right? Skinny, if you don't know what that word means. Skinny, real skinny, right? Where you see the bones, that's what emaciated is, right? A lot of people that are spiritual, man, right, is like emaciated. Let me see a picture. Get a picture so y'all can see what I'm talking about, right? You don't want your spirit man to look like this. It says the term emaciated refers to being very thin and feeble, especially due to lack of nutrition, right? And what's our nutrition? What's our nutrition? Our nutrition, we got water, right? We got bread, we got milk, we got honey. That's the scriptures. That's how we get our nutrition. That's how we get fat in this thing, right? Doing that, right? But a lot of people, not a lot of people, but you got some people in the truth, right? That's in this truth where their spirit man is emaciated, right? Lacking nutrition. They not feeding them because they ain't putting no work, right? But this is the definition, and here's the picture. Look how skinny this man is, right? These pictures are for educational purposes, right? But you see it, right? Skinny, right? Skinny. This is how a lot of people look through the spirit. Now, we're not talking about these people, right? We're not talking about these people in their conditions, but we're using this as a simile of how some people's spirits are, right? We're not talking about these people, but we're saying using these pictures as a simile or a similitude of how people are looking through the spirit because they're not being diligent, because they're not being sincere, they're not being on fire, they're not putting no work, they just slothful, right? So let's go back to that precept, right? It says the soul of the sluggard desireth and have nothing, right? So that sluggard man, you're not going to receive nothing. All that hoping and wanting the kingdom, but ain't doing nothing, it's all vain. You can sit there and hope for the kingdom all day, but if you ain't putting no work, you ain't doing nothing. You ain't repenting, you ain't reading, you ain't fasting, you ain't doing nothing. You just doing nothing. You ain't doing nothing. But yet you desire the kingdom. The greatest thing on earth, you expect to get that by sitting on your behind. It's crazy, right? But anyways, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. So that diligent man, his spirit man is not going to be emaciated, right? He's going to be, he's going to be eating. He's going to look good. Gonna have a little pot belly, right? Because he's eating good. He's feeding the spirit man, right? So let's get another precept. We're going to go to Sirach 27:3. Right? Sirach 27:3. And then that's going to be my last joint. Right? Sirach 27:3. All right, the book of Sirach, chapter 27, verse 3. And this is another precept too to think about this too. Right? It says, unless a man hold himself diligently in the fear of the Lord, his house shall soon be overthrown. So a man, right, if you don't hold yourself diligent in this truth, your house gonna be soon overthrown. And not just you saying somebody got a household, you could just, it could just be you. Your spiritual house is gonna be overthrown, right? Because you're not being diligent. Right? Because you gotta think about it. The Lord, He set us up with a foundation, right? He gave us a foundation. He set us up with that. Now we gotta be diligent and add to that foundation. Right? He set us up for success. Now we just gotta put in the work and build it up. We gotta build this spiritual house up, brick by brick. Of course, with the assistance of your Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Of course, you don't do it alone, right? But it's saying that you gotta put in some work. The Lord isn't gonna help you build this spiritual house and you ain't doing nothing. Right? You gotta build your spiritual house, get it right, get it together, build it up. Get yourself built up in this truth, right? So with that being said, again, unless a man hold himself diligently, right? Diligently, if you're not doing that, and we know that diligently, that's diligent, right? That's putting forth force, exceeding, abundance, careful, steady, right? That's what that is. If you're not doing these things, right, what's going to happen? Your house is going to be overthrown, right? Your spiritual house is going to collapse, right? Because you ain't putting in no work. Your spiritual man is going to be emaciated, right? You're going to spiritually fall asleep because you're being slothful, right? It doesn't pay to not be, you got to be diligent in truth. You got to be diligent. It's a very important thing. And that's why we start off with the book of Psalms 119:4. He said, thou hast commanded us. Right, let me get it. Let me get that for the go. Psalms 119:4. Thou hast commanded us to keep thy precepts diligently. Simple, man. Right, we gotta be diligent in this thing. Right, you gotta be diligent. Right, you gotta be diligent in this thing. So, Lord willing, that was edifying through the Spirit. Want to give our honor and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Want to be a brother and sister, mighty shalom. You do have Pentecost coming up, right? So make sure that your spirit is together. Make sure you got something to show forth and bring to the Lord, right? Because Pentecost is first fruits, right? Make sure you got some fruit, some spiritual fruit to bring forth, right? But shalom. Kwame Shala.